The moment Maya stepped into first class, the room changed. Not because she announced herself, she never needed to, but because silence has a way of sharpening when people decide someone doesn't belong. She felt the eyes first, a dozen quick glances dressed up as curiosity, each one whispering the same question: how did she get here? She ignored them, the way she had ignored stairs her whole life, and slid gracefully into seat 1A, window seat, her favorite. She placed her briefcase by her side, crossed one leg over the other, and opened her phone as if the entire world beyond the cabin belonged to her schedule alone. It didn't take long. The cough of disapproval, the rustle of an expensive jacket, then a voice, sharp, male, heavy with entitlement. "Excuse me, I think you're in the wrong section." Maya looked up. The man across the aisle had silvering hair and a watch that announced itself before he did. His smile was thin, as if good manners were a tax he resented paying. She met his eyes, steady. "No," she said, "I'm not." He cleared his throat like a judge about to speak. "This is first class." "I'm aware." A woman 2 rows back leaned forward, all linen and perfume. "Sometimes the gate agents misscan. It happens," she said, voice sweet-edged. "I'm sure they'll sort it." Maya let out a breath through her nose, barely a sound. "I'm sure they will," she said, and returned to her phone. A young flight attendant approached with pre-departure water, smile careful, eyes flicking between the faces like someone stepping through rain without wanting to get wet. "Would you like still or sparkling?" she asked Maya. "Still, please." "Sparkling," the man called across, as if announcing his preference could drown out hers. Maya accepted the glass, set it on the armrest, and scrolled to her calendar. She had color-coded the next 3 days to look deceptively simple. A keynote, 2 closed-door sessions, 1 dinner she would not stay for. The topic headings were clean. The list of people who would try to test her, less so. "Ma'am," the attendant had reappeared, hands folded. "May I see your boarding pass?" She looked at her, young, new to this kind of moment. She held out the pass without irritation. The scanner chirped a neat, unambiguous green. The attendant nodded. "Thank you," she said, a soft apology traveling under the words. The man across the aisle leaned back, unimpressed with facts. "You understand the confusion," he told the attendant, not Maya. "Standards are important." "Sir, we're still boarding. Please take your seat." The woman in linen smiled, to no one in particular, the way people do when they think the room agrees with them. "It's not personal," she murmured, which is the thing people say when it's precisely that. Maya turned to the window. Out on the tarmac, a line of orange vests glowed like small suns. A luggage cart shivered past. The late sun licked the wing. She liked this view, the mix of noise and competence, the choreography of people doing hard work without applause. Her phone buzzed. "Remember, cut the second paragraph. The first line has to carry the weight." She'd sent that note to herself last night. She smiled. She'd been right then. She was still right now. "Mom, look," a small voice said. A boy, maybe 7, in the bulkhead row, pointed toward the cockpit door. "Pilots!" His mother drew him back gently. "Inside voice, honey." Maya felt the boy's eyes drifting toward her. Children didn't look away as quickly. They examined without guilt. He pointed at her briefcase. "Is that heavy?" "Sometimes," she said. "What's in it?" "Work." He considered this. "Do you like your work?" "Yes." "Then it's not heavy," he said confidently, and turned back around. The plane filled. The overhead bins closed with neat clicks. The door thudded shut. The jet bridge hissed away. Everyone acted like they hadn't been watching everyone else. The purser, a man with calm shoulders and a voice that could land a plane, came through for the final checks. He glanced down at Maya's row, took in the arrangement of faces, and for a second his posture dipped, the slightest sag of, "Here we go again." Then he straightened again, professional, and continued. When the engines wound up, the cabin trembled. Maya set her glass down, she placed her phone on airplane mode, and watched the map swell to blue. The man across the aisle looked over pointedly as the nose lifted and the world leaned back. At 10,000 feet, seatbelts unlatched in a row of silver sighs. Screens lit. Someone ordered champagne like they needed to be seen wanting it. The woman in linen took off her jacket in a way that wanted an audience. Maya ordered peppermint tea, not because she needed it, but because it grabbed the nerves and folded them flat. The attendant, Isla, her name tag said, brought it with a grateful smile. "If there's anything you need," she added, voice lowered, "please tell me directly." "Thank you, Isla." Isla hovered a second. "I'm sorry for—" "You did your job," Maya said. "It's fine." The apology rearranged itself mid-air and landed as relief. Isla nodded and moved on. "Some people," the man across the aisle began, addressing his glass, "conduct themselves as if rules don't apply." Maya didn't look up. "Some people forget the rules were written to serve, not exclude." He chuckled as if she'd confirmed a bias. "Ah, you're one of those." "One of what?" "The aggrieved." She finally looked at him, steady as a level. "No, one of the paying." His mouth opened, shut, reopened into a smirk. "Well," he said, "as long as that's true." She smiled, small and closed. "As long as it's true," she echoed, and returned to her screen. She didn't plan to fight with strangers for 5 hours. She had a keynote to refine. She scrolled through the draft, thumb tapping out edits, the way she always did when she needed to prove to herself that control still existed somewhere. The opening line stood proud on the page. "We are not anomalies. We are the evidence." The line was simple. It was the kind you could hang a room on. Dinner orders came. "Sea bass, mushroom risotto, or seasonal salad," Isla recited. "Sea bass," the man said, like a decision. "Risotto," the woman chimed, performing restraint. "Salad," Maya said. The man glanced over. "You can eat more, you know," he said, mock concern wrapped in ribbon. "I know," Maya said, and added a comma to a sentence that needed one. Turbulence startled the glasses a few minutes later, small taps like a polite warning. A soft chorus of "oh," rose and fell. The seatbelt sign chimed. Maya buckled without looking, then let her eyes rest on the wing, that long certainty slicing the darkening sky.
When the plane calmed, the cabin settled into the predictability of night flight. Whispers, the rustle of a blanket, the bright rectangle of someone's movie reflected in their eyes. Maya worked, cut a paragraph, moved a phrase to where it mattered, turned a soft sentence hard. A while later, Isla returned with a frown she tried to flatten. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "when you have a moment, the purser would like to speak with you. It's—" she searched for a word that didn't accuse. "Procedural?" The man across the aisle smiled at his hands. Maya locked her tablet and stood. The aisle felt narrower, not because it was, but because attention makes everything smaller. She followed Isla to the forward galley. The purser stood there, hands folded, eyes careful. "Apologies for the interruption," he said. "We've had an irregularity in our system. We're reconfirming a few first-class seat assignments." "A few," Maya said. "Yes," he replied evenly. He was good at the job. He knew how to keep his face still while his mind walked laps. "What would you like to see?" "Boarding pass, ID." He hesitated. "If available, the original form of payment." "At 36,000 feet?" she said, a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. I understand it's inconvenient. It is, she agreed, and pulled out her wallet. She offered the boarding pass and ID first. Then, from a narrow slot, she produced a card, the one that lived there for exactly these moments. She placed them on the ledge, aligned, calm. He scanned the pass. Green. Checked the ID. Perfect match. The card he typed. The system thought, then nodded in its own mechanical way. Thank you, he said, a genuine release in his shoulders. We appreciate your patience. Do you log who is asked for reconfirmation? She asked, quiet. Yes. Good, she said gently. Then make sure you note this one. He held her gaze. I will. The cockpit door opened with a short hiss. The captain stepped out, a man with the look of long skies in his eyes. He glanced at Maya and the purser, read the scene in a single breath. Everything all right? All set, Captain, the purser said. The captain's eyes flickered back to Maya. A flicker of recognition crossed his features, not the celebrity-spotted kind, but the context-recognized kind. He let it pass. Very good, he said, and returned to the flight deck. Isla handed back the card, the pass, the ID. Thank you, she said, almost under her breath. Maya slid them away, each to its place. Thank you, she replied, and walked back down the aisle. She felt the looks more openly now, some embarrassed, some defiant, some trying to decide which they wanted to be. The man across the aisle tipped his head when she sat. All sorted? He asked, magnanimous the way people are when they believe the story is theirs. All noted, she said, returning to her tablet. Dinner came with cloches and knives that tried to look important. The sea bass received praise it hadn't earned. The risotto was declared surprisingly decent, which is a thing people say when they want to sound difficult. Maya ate her salad like it was fuel, not theater. The woman in linen leaned forward. Are you traveling on a program? She asked again, a little too interested. We're heading to a philanthropy event in Zurich. We sponsor students sometimes. It's lovely. I'm traveling for work, she said. Oh, the woman's smile sharpened. What do you do? Operations. The woman waited, expecting more. When none arrived, she tilted her head. Which company? Mine, she said, and sipped water. The woman's eyes blinked, recalibrating. That's wonderful, she said, as if she had bitten a seed. Across the aisle, the man sneered lightly. Everyone is a founder now, he murmured to his glass. Maya ignored him. She adjusted a sentence in her keynote until it stood clean and sure. Access is not a favor, it is a right acknowledged. She left it there, simple. The boy in the bulkhead peeked over his seat again. Do you have games on your phone? He whispered. Only boring ones, Maya said. My mom has boring ones too, he confided. She says they help her think. She's right. He considered her like a puzzle piece that suddenly fit. I like your shoes, he added, solemn. They look fast. Thank you, Maya said. They are. He nodded and disappeared. The mother mouthed, sorry, again. Maya shook her head, a small gesture. It's all right. Lights dimmed to a soft night. The cabin shifted into the quiet rhythm of long haul. Some masks came on, some shoes came off. The map crawled over the ocean like a small, honest animal. Maya closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to make room. Her mind cued its oldest rituals. 3 breaths counted slow, the weight of her shoulders asked to drop, the memory of a library card, a cracked screen, a mother's voice reminding her that the answer to "How did you get here?" is one step at a time, and none of them asked your permission. When she opened her eyes, Isla stood near the aisle, scanning the cabin with a quiet bodyguard energy, alert without showing it. Their eyes met. Isla lifted a thumb barely off her palm, a private check-in. Maya dicked her chin. Still good. Hours thinned. The cabin, less hostile now, became merely a room with strangers in it. Ignorance, when confronted with calm, often runs out of material. Near dawn, the purser returned, rested and formal again, the way professionals reset themselves. He stopped by Maya's seat. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, "breakfast choices are omelet or fruit and yogurt?" "Fruit," she said. "Coffee or tea?" "Tea." "Peppermint?" She smiled, small and real. "You remembered." He nodded once, almost a bow. "We remember what matters." The man across the aisle grunted awake. "Coffee, black," he declared, as if that made him decisive. He glanced at Maya, then away quickly, an apology almost reaching his mouth and losing its nerve. The window slowly traded night for the beginning of morning. Purple turned to pale gold, the wing cut through it like a signature. Maya watched the color arrive and felt the familiar math of landing assemble itself. Descent, approach, touch, brakes, relief. She opened her tablet one more time and read through the keynote start to finish. No flourish, no wound licking, just clear lines of thought that could stand in a room with any kind of weather. She trimmed a final adjective and let the first line breathe. "We are not anomalies. We are the evidence." She closed the document. Outside, the sun finally cleared the edge of the world. When the captain spoke again, his voice carried a warmth that wasn't there earlier. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We've begun our descent. Cabin crew, prepare the cabin for landing." Seatbacks lifted, shades rose. People remembered themselves. The woman in linen touched up her lipstick in a compact mirror, avoiding her own eyes. The man across the aisle straightened his tie twice and pretended it had always sat perfectly. Isla collected cups and trash with the efficiency of someone who liked clean endings. When she reached Maya, she paused. "Ma'am," she said softly, "thank you for your patience tonight." "Thank you for your professionalism," Maya replied. Isla's mouth twitched into a smile. "We practice," she said, and moved on. The wheels thudded down with that one moment of truth airplanes demand. A ripple of breath went through the cabin, the involuntary prayer of people who don't think they pray. The brakes hummed. The runway rushed, slowed, settled. The plane turned toward the gate like it knew the way home. As they taxied, phones woke up to the hunger of the world. The man across the aisle stared at a screen for a long time without seeing it. At last he leaned slightly towards Maya, not enough to presume closeness, just enough to be heard. "For what it's worth," he said, voice small in the returning daylight, "I hope your work goes well." She considered him. He looked different under morning, smaller, more human. "Thank you," she said. He nodded, grateful for the chance to be decent at the end. The seatbelt sign pinged off. People stood, eager to forget who they'd been at altitude. Overhead bins opened, bags appeared like excuses. Maya waited. She always waited. Rushing made people careless. When the aisle cleared, she rose, lifted her carry-on without effort, and placed the briefcase strap over her shoulder. The boy in the bulkhead waved with his whole arm. She waved back with 2 fingers. At the door, the purser and Isla stood together. "Have a good day, and welcome to Geneva." "Thank you," Maya said. "Break a leg, if you're presenting," Isla added, then flushed. Maya smiled, reached her eyes this time. "Something like that," she said.
The jet bridge breathed cool air that smelled faintly of metal and morning. Geneva was waking up, quiet, precise, unhurried. Maya walked with the kind of pace that said there was no rush and also no time to waste. Travelers fanned out in practice patterns, the sprinting, the meandering, the ones already arguing with their phones. Immigration was a row of glass and calm faces. A tall officer waved her forward without expression. She slid her passport through the gap, kept her hands visible on the ledge.
He scanned, looked up, looked down. Purpose of visit? Work. Duration? 3 days. He examined her again with that bureaucratic patience that measures stories. "Welcome to Switzerland," he said, and stamped her entry with the finality of a period. No smile, no issue. She nodded once, a private thanks to whatever gears had turned without grinding. She had only carry-on because it made airports behave. Past customs, the arrivals hall opened like a promise. Chauffeurs with signs, a florist's pop of color, a coffee bar already gathering the jet-lagged. A line of black suits held placards, names scrawled in marker, companies in familiar fonts. One sign read m.laurent.ops. Her eyes passed over it the way you notice your reflection and choose not to wave. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number with a Geneva country code. "Welcome to GVA, Ms. Johnson. If you need anything for the flight back, our team is at your disposal." No logo, no signature. Discretion like a handshake. She typed, "Appreciated, I'm all set." Then archived the thread into the folder where she kept things that didn't need to be seen. "Taxi, madame," a driver asked in careful English. "Hotel du Rhône." He took her bag, gentle with the handle in a way that told her he had raised children who had left their toys on stairs. The car was clean and anonymous. The city slid by, lake to the right like a mirrored thought, watch boutiques on corners pretending time could be caged behind glass. The driver didn't talk until the second light. He asked, "Conference?" Not prying, but just filling the air. "Yes." "Geneva lives for them." He gestured lightly with 2 fingers, taking in the banners that fluttered from lampposts. "People come to discuss the world and then go home to it." She smiled at the truth of that. "Do you like driving during conference weeks?" He considered. "He says my wife has the patience for it," he said, then glanced at her in the mirror. "You have the face of someone who will speak and make people listen." Let's hope the microphones agree. At the hotel, a paneled lobby made intentions. Wood, stone, flowers arranged like mathematics. The front desk clerk was quick with a smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. "Bonjour, welcome. Last name?" "Johnson." Her keyboard clicked, the smile thawed by degrees. "Yes, we have you in a junior suite, City View. We usually ask for a card for incidentals." "Of course." Maya passed a card, not the metal one, the ordinary one she used to be ordinary. The clerk's eyes flicked down and then softened on the return. "Breakfast is served from 6 to 10. There's a note here. Would you like the conference shuttle?" "I'll walk." "Very good, Miss Johnson. Enjoy your stay." The room was a high-floor hush. Floor-to-ceiling glass framed the river like a line she did underline. She didn't unpack, she never did for short trips. She hung a suit, lined up shoes that looked fast because the boy had been right, set her briefcase on the desk like a second heartbeat. She boiled water in the electric kettle and watched steam turn the window into a thought. Her phone vibrated. Ethan. "Touchdown." "Yes." "How's the weather over there?" "Cool. Precise." "Plane okay?" "Smooth. Peppermint tea and diplomacy." A pause she could feel across an ocean. "You good?" "I'm good." "You're going to flatten that room." "That's the plan. Go to sleep." "Only if you promise to eat actual lunch today." "No promises, Mr. Johnson." "Then I'll send you a photo of mine. A threatening salad." She sent a small photo of the river instead. He sent back a heart and the airplane emoji that didn't know how literal it was being. She stretched, showered, changed the plane out of her skin. By mid-morning, she was walking the 12 minutes to the Congress Center with the rest of the suits and lanyards that gave people permission to be in rooms. A row of flags made the wind visible. Volunteers in branded T-shirts handed out programs with the relief of people whose job was clear. Inside was a city of temporary structures, stages, booths, lounges pretending to be living rooms. A registration desk labeled speakers stood at the far left like a dare. She stepped in line behind a woman with a nervous laugh and a man repeating his name as if it might forget him. The volunteer looked up when it was her turn. Name? Maya Johnson. He typed, stopped, started again like he didn't trust his first try. One moment. He turned to the woman beside him, whispered, turned back. May I see your ID? She handed it over without heat. He scanned. Something aligned. His face reset. I'm so sorry, Miss Johnson. Welcome. He slid a lanyard toward her, the speaker badge heavy enough to have opinions. Your green room is A3. Tech check at 11? I'll be there. Your keynote is tomorrow at 9. The moderator would also love a few minutes now if you have time. I have 7. He laughed because he thought it was a joke. She walked because it wasn't. Backstage was the same in every city. Cables pretending to be vines, black curtains swallowing nerves, tech tables where sound lived and died. A woman in a headset approached, 3 coffees deep and holding. Maya, hi, I'm Lena. Show caller. Mic preference? Lapel. Handheld backup. Copy. Slides in your machine? Here. I hold up my tablet. Perfect. We'll mirror. Timer on the downstage monitor. There's a confidence screen with notes if you want it. I don't. Lena's eyes warmed in appreciation. All right then. Stand on the white mark during walk-on. They've got lighting to make everyone look like they sleep. Anything else? Can you kill the housekeeping slide right before I start? I want to come into silence. Lena grinned. I like you already. From the other side of the curtain came the muted applause of someone thanking a sponsor too long. She could hear the vowels of 3 languages clapping over each other. She looked at the stage from the wing, the kind of minimalist design that thought it wasn't making a statement and therefore was. A row of chairs waited for a panel that would be warmer than it looked. She inhaled the dust and electricity smell that all stages share and let it settle. Miss Johnson? A young voice behind her. She turned. The girl couldn't have been more than 19, hair in a careful bun, badge reading, intern. She held a stack of programs like a shield. Yes? I'm, Emily. The girl swallowed. I wanted to say, your piece last year about open infrastructure, we shared it in our campus group. It made a lot of us think differently. Sorry, I just wanted to say thank you. Maya's mouth softened. What are you studying, Emily? Computer science, but she glanced at the stage. Also, everything. It feels like everything. It does. Maya said, it stops feeling like that, and then it starts again. That's how you know you're working on something that matters. Emily exhaled a laugh that was almost a confession. Can I ask, what do you do right before you go out there? Right before? Yes, right before. I count 3 breaths, I decide the first sentence, and I remember who I came to speak for. Emily nodded like someone storing a recipe. Thank you, she said again, then stepped backwards into her tasks a little taller. The moderator, a man who had made a career of guiding other people to their point, slid up with an iPad and frenetic charm. Maya, hi, thrilled. Tomorrow, 9 sharp? Are you open to 2 minutes of framing before you begin? No, she said, kind but surgical. Let me set the room. We'll both be happier. He laughed, thinking it banter until he saw that it wasn't. Copy that, he said, and tapped a note to remember not to improvise. Tech check was a run-through without the words. Lights found her. The mic set right where sound needed it. The first slide held, then dissolved on cue. She stood on the white tape and looked out at the empty seats like a swimmer looks at a pool before the dive, measuring depth, temperature, danger, joy. At noon, she let herself be led to a luncheon that was identical to every luncheon in every city. Round tables, name placards, conversations that wanted to be deals, cutlery that clinked in unison. She sat with a minister from a small country and a founder who said disruption like an apology. The salad was blameless, the bread was excellent.
Halfway through, a familiar profile entered the room. The man from 1C, the first-class neighbor with the big watch and the small imagination. He looked different in daylight and context, slightly reduced, like a sculpture seen from the wrong angle. He didn't see her at first. He was led to a table of bankers, the kind who thought they were the only ones at lunch. When his eyes finally brushed past her, they snagged. Recognition did its strange, unwilling dance. He held an uncertain gaze for a second longer than was polite. She tipped her head the way one acknowledges weather. He looked down, then up, then away. It was almost an apology. Not yet. A woman took the seat beside Maya with the confidence of someone used to being invited. "You're Maya," she said, in a voice that could organize a protest by accident. "I'm Sophia Reyes. We met once in Nairobi. Panel on equitable access?" "Of course," Maya said, because she remembered everyone who did the work and very few who only talked about it. Sophia gestured with her fork toward the stage in the adjacent room. "The afternoon session is going to be a mess," she said brightly. "Two regulators who hate each other, a platform exec who's allergic to questions, and a journalist who thinks being loud is the same as being right." "Sounds lively," Maya said. "Or long," Sophia said, then leaned in. "We're hosting a small gathering tonight. No press, no panels, just people who need the same reality. You should come." "Text me the address," Maya said. Her eyes flicked left and right, conspiratorial for show. "I will," she said, then softer. "I heard about what happened on your flight." Maya's fork paused. "People are efficient at telling stories across cities." "People are bored," Sophia said, unbothered, "and sometimes attentive. I wasn't sure whether to bring it up." "You did," Maya said, not unkindly. "I did," Sophia said. "If it helps, you handled it the way a lot of us hope we would." "I handled it the way I could at the time. Tomorrow I'll try to handle the room." "Tomorrow," Sophia agreed, and clinked her water against Maya's like it was champagne. The afternoon was panels and side corridors and the carnival of being seen. Maya kept moving, a small orbit of the serious. People approached with ideas disguised as favors, and favors disguised as ideas. She gave each the correct weight, which was more than most expected and less than some wanted. By 5, she allowed herself the walk back to the hotel. Geneva's late light made a cathedral out of the ordinary. On the bridge, a boy fed crumbs to birds with the solemnity of a priest. A couple argued softly over directions, and then kissed like the argument had been a detour they'd both enjoyed. In her room, she stood by the window and read her keynote aloud, once, quietly, not for sound, but for shape. The words held, the spine felt strong. She circled a phrase that tried too hard and cut it. Her phone lit with a message from Ethan, a photo of an aggressively virtuous salad, and a text. As promised, threat detected. She sent back a picture of her own room service tray, soup and an apple. "Neutralized," she typed. At 7, she dressed for Sophia's gathering. Nothing formal, nothing loud. A black dress with pockets that made her smile, because women in rooms deserved pockets. Flats because the city would have cobblestones, and dignity was not in heels. The address led her to a townhouse that looked unassuming until you noticed the way people entered it, fast, like relief. Inside there were faces she knew, and faces she would know by morning. The furniture had been pushed back to make room for ideas. Someone had made empanadas, and someone else had brought wine in bottles that had survived other conversations. Sophia pulled her in with a hug that skipped the acquaintance stage. "There you are. We were about to start without the person we needed." "I'm not a person you need. I'm a person who will say a thing and then leave before the encore." "Exactly," Sophia said, pleased. "Come." They gathered in a circle that pretended not to be righteous. A young man with a camera he was not using took notes. An older woman who had been fired from 3 newspapers and hired by 5 spoke first in a voice like sandpaper and honey.
We keep giving panels our throats. We need to start giving them our conditions. A regulator from a country most maps misdrew talked about spectrum and power and how access gets sold twice. A founder admitted that his product worked well for the people who least needed it. No one pretended they were saving the world. They were trying to stop it from tripping. When it was Maya's turn, she didn't make a speech. She spoke the way you do when the room has earned it. Tomorrow, I'm going to say something simple. Not because simple is easier, but because it leaves less room for excuses. Heads dipped. Phones slid face down. She continued. We are not asking to be allowed in. We are recording that we are here. If the infrastructure doesn't see us, then the infrastructure needs to learn. If the market doesn't price us, then the market is wrong. If policy doesn't protect us, then policy is late. That's it. That's the whole thing. The older journalist smiled like a storm breaking. Good, she said. Let them quote that without understanding it, then make them understand. Maya stayed just long enough to be fed and to listen. On the way out, a man by the door, tall, understated, inclined his head. He wore a pin on his lapel that she recognized, a discreet insignia only seen by people who knew what it meant. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. Miss Johnson, if you require anything with your logistics while you're here. I'm fine, she said, the corner of her mouth acknowledging the subtext. Of course, we'll remain in the background, he said, which was both promise and profession. Back in the hotel elevator, a couple in gala wear stepped in, smelling like good cologne and an argument deferred. The woman looked at Maya's badge, still hanging loose on its lanyard, and smiled a practiced smile. Are you staff for the conference? She asked, pleasant. Maya met her eyes. In a way, she said, and the doors slid open. She slept like people who have agreed with themselves. Morning arrived with a pale certainty. She dressed in a suit that refused to apologize for being simple. She put on earrings that caught light without chasing it. She left her phone on Do Not Disturb except for Ethan and a contact labeled with a single letter that stood for a complicated truth. Backstage again, the air felt warmer. People greeted her with the careful deference reserved for names printed large in programs. The moderator buzzed with caffeine and caution. Lena handed her a mic and a look that said, "We're ready when you are." Maya stood by the curtain. She counted the first breath, and the second, and the third. She decided the first sentence again, just to be sure. She thought about the boy who said her shoes looked fast, and the woman who asked if she was staff, and Isla's coconut hand cream, and the purser who logged the moment because she told him to. The MC wrapped up the housekeeping slide, voice bouncing lightly. The cooled room cooled 1 degree, the way crowds do when they know themselves to be at the edge of something. The housekeeping slide dissolved to black, per her request. Silence held. Please welcome, the MC said, letting the last syllable carry. Maya Johnson.
She stepped into the light. The stage lights lifted like morning. The room, 1,000 faces, 1,000 private headlines, waited. Maya found the white mark on the floor and the silence she'd asked for. She let it breathe with her. We are not anomalies, she said, voice even, full. We are the evidence. The sentence settled, then spread. People leaned forward, some to agree, some to calculate. I want to start with how systems recognize reality, not how they talk about it, how they behave. Because policy, product, capital, none of it is language first. It's incentives, it's defaults, it's the design of doors. Slide 1 appeared. A simple graphic, 3 doors labeled policy, market, infrastructure. No animation, no seduction. Door 1, policy, she said. If the law names us, it protects us. If it fails to name us, We disappear in the paperwork. That's not a debate, it's a data lineage problem. Slide 2. A small table of stats, access gaps, service deserts, latency and cost curves across neighborhoods mapped by income, not geography. Door 2. Market. When the demand that isn't measured looks like it doesn't exist, the market will congratulate itself for optimizing around absence. We call that efficiency. It's just ignorance with good branding. Soft laughter. Relief from one corner, discomfort from another. Door 3. Infrastructure. She said, "This one is my home territory." A map bloomed. Fiber, towers, clouds. The invisible skeleton of daily life. When the backbone is built without us in mind, we get the version of access that looks inclusive in a brochure and feels slow in a house. She let the room hold the picture. You don't fix that with slogans. You fix it by showing up in the blueprint phase. You fix it by funding the last mile like it mattered as much as the first. She walked 2 paces. She didn't pace to think. She moved to land ideas where eyes would follow. "Here's what we did," she said simply. "No case study theatrics, just the work. We audited which regions had the mismatch between talk and service. We mapped where queues formed, in clinics, in schools, in small businesses with big ambitions and ancient routers. We didn't guess, we looked. Then we partnered with municipalities and independent carriers who knew their own streets better than any slide deck." Slide 3. Before-after latencies, contract structures that paid for uptime instead of promises. A small clip of a kid in a public library joining a video lab without buffering. The kind of miracle that shouldn't be a miracle. Metrics, she continued. Uptime increased. Transaction failures dropped by half in 6 months. The cost curve didn't lie, it bent. Do you know what else changed? She paused. The number of stories people told about resilience. Because you don't need to be resilient when the system isn't busy breaking you. A gust of applause, not loud, real. She let it ebb. If you came for a miracle, I don't have one. If you came for a recipe, I do. She held up one finger. First, put affected communities on the design team, not as consultants, on payroll with authority and a veto. Second, fund maintenance like you fund launch. Sizzle doesn't keep a network up. Sober budgets do. Third, tie every dollar to an outcome that users feel, not metrics that executives admire. Fourth, publish the gaps. The fastest way to expose performative inclusion is a public dashboard with real numbers. Darkness is where excuses breed. She stepped back a half inch, let the lights wash a little cooler. You'll hear 2 objections. Her voice shifted, not mocking, but precise. Objection 1, merit. The idea that widening access lowers standards. Translation, our default beneficiaries might have to compete, and that feels like a downgrade. A few laughs, a few winces. Answer, standards don't lower when more people can meet them. They rise because competition finally reflects reality. Objection 2, cost. Always cost, like it's the first time we've ever priced fairness. She nodded to the finance row where blazers sat like fences. Answer, you already pay for exclusion, in lost productivity, in delayed innovation, in health outcomes that cascade into budgets. Inclusion is not charity, it's risk management with better math. She didn't move. She let the quiet change shape. I'm going to tell you something small and personal, and then we'll get back to the architecture. A photo slid up, not of her, of a public library, cinder block, fluorescent lights, a row of old computers. I learned to code in a room like this. The machines were older than the kids. The chairs squeaked like they were alive. The connection was slow enough to make patience a skill. A faint smile. A boy once asked me if my work was heavy. I told him yes. He said, "Then you must not like it enough." A ripple of laughter. He was wrong about weight, but right about love. Love makes the load make sense. She cleared the slide. So here's my ask. If you design policy, write the names in the law. If you control capital, tie it to outcomes, not optics. If you build infrastructure, invite people in before you pour concrete, literal or digital. And if you're none of those, but you vote, ask your representatives why the budget loves highways more than households. Her last slide was a single sentence, white on black. Access isn't a favor. It's a fact. Act like it. She closed her tablet. Thank you.
Applause rose like a wall, then traveled, alive. Some stood, some didn't. The ones who didn't were worth noting. The moderator came out with a smile calibrated for tides. We have time for questions, he said, surprised that his voice carried. Mics found the aisles. Rules were read and immediately forgotten. First question, a woman from a telecom in a small country. How do you avoid stepping on local players when you scale? We don't step. We partner. If we can't find a partner, we're the wrong company for that city. Second question, a regulator. Crisp suit, sharp mind. Your public dashboards, how do you prevent them from becoming marketing? Sunlight and independent audits. Our numbers live where critics can reach them. Third, a familiar voice at mic 3. The man from 1C. He didn't make a show of it. He just adjusted his tie and asked, if the market has limited resources, how do you justify prioritizing access over, say, returns to existing investors who took on early risk? There it was, the elegant version of a blunt thought. Maya didn't blink. The market doesn't have limited resources, it has selected allocations, she said. Returns depend on growth, and growth depends on demand, and demand expands when more people can participate. If your model protects yesterday's returns at the expense of tomorrow's market, you're not defending risk, you're starving it. A smatter of applause, sharper than polite. The man nodded once, not defeated, thinking. Another hand, a journalist who liked the taste of his own questions. Isn't this all a way to advance woke capital under the guise of efficiency? He put air quotes around two words and waited for conflict. If efficiency means building for the largest actual market, then yes. If woke means awake to reality, then yes. If you're asking whether we do this to feel good, no. I can buy feelings cheaper. Laughter, loud enough to reset the temperature. The moderator, emboldened, checked the clock. Last one. A student, badge hanging, voice shaking, asked, how do you stay you when rooms are like this? Maya smiled with her mouth in her eyes. By remembering who sent me. People who can't be in the room. People who won't read the recap. She paused. And by leaving on time. The room laughed, then stood again without being asked. The applause felt clean. Backstage, Lena squeezed her forearm in the efficient way crews show affection. She said, perfect land. Thank you for not moving off your mark. Thank you for killing the housekeeping slide. It mattered. The moderator arrived, effusive and sweaty. That was, well, yes. Thank you for setting the room. You're welcome. And she meant it. Sophia materialized with a grin that made her look 10 years younger. She said, you skewered them with a spoon. No blood, all truth. Good. Spoons are democratic. In the green room, the man from 1C stood in the doorway. For a second, the past 24 hours stacked like chairs. Ms. Johnson, he said quietly, no grandstanding now. I wanted to say, I misread you on the plane. You misread what you wanted to see, she said, not unkind. He absorbed it. Yes, he said. And I wanted to ask, if your team ever needs a capital partner who can be patient and public about outcomes, we don't do quiet conversions. We do terms. He nodded. Understood. He hesitated. I'm sorry. I appreciate that. Do better with the next person. That's the interest on the apology. He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Fair. He left without trying to linger. Progress, incremental and unglamorous. Maya sat for the first time in hours. The post-adrenaline chill came as it always did, like a draft under a door. She wrapped her hands around a paper cup of tea that had forgotten it used to be hot. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, watch the stream from bed. You were clean fire. Maya, that's not a thing. Ethan, it is when you do it. Maya, go back to sleep. Ethan, can't. Adrenaline by proxy. Also, Ops pinged me. Your inbound crew logged a reconfirmation. She stared at the screen a second longer than necessary. Maya, they logged it. Ethan, good. Want me to escalate? Maya, not yet. I'll handle it on the return. A beat. Ethan, proud of you. Eat. Maya, soup and an apple last night. Ethan, criminal. Lunch with Sophia? Maya, maybe. By afternoon, the conference moved on to panels that sounded like weather reports from planets with different gravity. Maya did her duty, sat on one, asked a good question on another, and gave one no when a sponsor wanted a photo by a banner that said nothing. Between sessions, the older journalist intercepted her near the espresso machine. That line, she rasped, about markets protecting yesterday's returns, I'll quote it. Quote the data, too, Maya said, not just the sentence. I will, the journalist leaned in. You've got some shadows. Maya glanced at the edges of the room. She'd noticed them, too, the discreet watchers with lanyards that said nothing. Harmless, she said, mostly. Good, the journalist said. Hate when a story ends badly. Me too, Maya said. It ruins the moral. Late afternoon bled into early evening. The small gathering at Sophia's had sent ripples out. In conversations, people used the word conditions more than opportunity. A win, even if temporary. On her walk back to the hotel, a light rain began, Geneva's polite weather. She didn't run. The city didn't punish people for not having umbrellas. In the lobby, the front desk clerk perked up. Miss Johnson, there's a note for you. A small envelope, blank. Inside, a card with clean handwriting. Compliments of the house. If you'd like to see the hanger later, it can be arranged. A number, no name. The discreet insignia again, embossed faintly in the corner. She turned the card once between her fingers. She didn't need to see the hanger. She knew it better than most. But she smiled at the courtesy of the offer and at the fact that the city had found its way to say, we know who you are. We'll be quiet about it. She slept early, not out of virtue, but out of strategy. The body, like a system, rewards maintenance. Departure day began with a clear sky and a calendar that obeyed her. Checkout, car, airport. At security, the premium line moved with Swiss efficiency. A guard recognized her, not her name, her composure, and waved her through with the kind of softness that says, I see you, without making you pay for it. At the gate, she took a seat away from the glass, back to a wall. Habit. She read through emails she had been ignoring and deleted half. Her phone buzzed. Gate change. Now A12. She glanced up. The monitor agreed. A small tide of people stood and flowed left. At A12, boarding screens glowed with the airline's familiar blue. A uniformed manager stood near the podium with the alert posture of someone who planned to fix things before they became things. When he saw her, he didn't approach. He adjusted a process. The agents' voices softened by a degree. The line moved with less friction than usual. First class boarded. She walked down the jet bridge. No slow, no story, just steps. At the door, a senior flight attendant greeted passengers, scanning faces, managing energy. When Maya reached her, The woman's eyes registered something beyond the usual calculus. Recognition, yes, but also a choice. "Welcome aboard," the attendant said. "Warmth real, not syrup." "Thank you," Maya said. She turned left, row 1, seat 1A. Again, a circle closed by intention, not accident. The cabin felt different on this leg. Not emptier, just less interested in policing. She stowed her briefcase, she sat. She took a breath that didn't have to explain itself. Across the aisle, seat 1C was empty. The man from before wasn't on this flight. Fine. Redemption doesn't need witnesses. Pre-departure water arrived. "Still or sparkling?" the attendant asked. "Still." "Peppermint tea after takeoff," the attendant added, almost conspiratorial. Maya's eyes warmed. "Please." The purser approached before pushback, posture open. "Miss Johnson," he said quietly, "I reviewed the inbound log. I'm sorry for the inconvenience." "Thank you," she said. She held his gaze, not to make him uncomfortable, but to make sure he understood the word inconvenience had edges. "We've reinforced procedures, and we've briefed the team." She nodded once. "Good." He hesitated, then, "If there's anything you need during the flight, anything at all, just let me know." "I will," she said. He moved on. She exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd cached. The door closed. The jet bridge withdrew. The plane eased into its choreography with the ground. As they taxied, a text from Ethan appeared. "Wheels up?" "Almost," she wrote. "Crew is aware." "As they should be. Want me at the gate on arrival?" She smiled. "No need. Save the hello for home." "Deal. Proud of you. Again, always." "Go run your empire," she typed. "You first," he replied. The engines rose. The runway unfurled. Maya rested her head back and let the plane do what it was built to do. At 10,000 feet, seatbelts side open. The attendant brought peppermint tea without asking. Maya wrapped her hands around the cup and thought about the boy in Bulkhead, about Sophia's circle, about the journalist's rasp, about the moderator who learned not to preamble her. She opened her tablet, not to work, but to write a note for herself. You kept your seat. You kept your tone. You kept your aim. She added a fourth line. Tomorrow, audit the intake flow for reconfirmations. Publish it. She closed the tablet and looked out at a sky that didn't care who had paid for the seat or who had tried to protect it. Somewhere below, cables carried the lives she wanted to make simpler. 2 hours into the flight, the cockpit door opened briefly. The captain stepped out for the quiet checks that happen outside systems. He caught her eye and offered the smallest nod. Nothing theatrical, just the courtesy professionals share. Maya nodded back. Courtesy received. Courtesy returned. She didn't need the last word. She needed the next step. The plane hummed, and she let it.
Touchdown. Brakes hummed. The runway slid from motion to memory. At the door, the purser waited with the quiet focus of people who care about the last 5 minutes as much as the first. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, voice low, "on behalf of the company, thank you. Not for flying, for something larger." "Thank you," she replied, and stepped into the jet bridge. A station manager stood just inside, clipboard tucked under his arm, eyes steady. "Morning, ma'am. Ops is on Channel 3. The reconfirmation policy you requested went system-wide at 06. He lifted the clipboard. "Would you like to review the bulletin before it goes to crew training?" She scanned the single page. Clear language, no loopholes. No passenger shall be asked to reconfirm a first-class seat, absent a documented technical trigger. Any deviation must be logged and escalated. She uncapped the pen that lived in her briefcase and signed. M. Johnson, Chair. "Thank you, ma'am," the manager said, relief audible. "And welcome home." She nodded, took the service corridor instead of the terminal crowd, and followed the familiar gray carpet to a glass-walled room where the airline's live map pulsed, routes arcing and landing like controlled lightning.
A controller swiveled in his chair, half smile, half salute. "Good flight?" She said, "Good crew. Keep it that way." On the tarmac below, a fuel truck nosed into place. A ground lead spotted her through the glass and touched 2 fingers to his cap. She thought of Isla's peppermint tea, the purser's careful log, the captain's smallest nod. Machines make the headlines, people keep them honest. Her phone buzzed. "Ethan. Saw the bulletin. Looks sharp. Proud of you." Maya. "Team did the work. I just signed the door they built." Ethan. "Dinner at 7? Maya. "Only if there's bread." Ethan. "Threatening salad optional." She smiled and slid the phone away. In the elevator down to street level, she replayed the first line of her keynote, the boy's verdict on heavy work, the woman's question in the elevator. "Are you staff?" In a way, yes. She worked for the public that paid, for the crews who carried, for the passengers who shouldn't have to prove their place after they'd already taken it. Outside, morning air met her like a promise. A driver opened the door and waited. Before getting in, she typed one more note to herself. Publish monthly reconfirmation stats. Add bias response drill to recurrent training. Invite Amelie to summer program. Send. Done. She didn't need the last word. She had the next policy, the next room, the next young voice she could make louder than a whisker. Then she got in the car, closed the door gently, and let the city move around her.
And if the road she's on found you too, don't let it stop here. Share it. Talk about it. Remember, true success isn't power or wealth, it's transformation. The greatest teachers often go unseen. Hit subscribe below, join this community, and let's keep telling stories that remind the world greatness isn't being seen, it's seeing others. Drop a comment with your thoughts and add your city for a special shout out in our next story.